Okay, Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul-Malik Ahmed from DeenTV. I'm here with none other than Boonaa Mohammed, everybody well-known spoken word artist and also, a film director. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So I really appreciate you taking time out to, come and talk to us on DeenTV.
No problem.
Alhamdulillah. So first, I have a couple questions here, for you. First off, I wanted to know, we know you as a great spoken word artist. We know you in that field, but you kind of moved to the filmmaking field. So right. Tell us, why did you decide to do that and what led you down that direction?
Well, I think actually my first passion has always just been storytelling. I think that's the world that I come from. And actually my earliest stage experience was all in theater. So I started off actually doing theater and acting, and I actually went to school for media. A lot of people don't know this, but I have a degree from Ryerson University. It's one of the top kind of media schools in Canada, from the Rogers Communications Radio and Television Arts program. So that's really my educational background, and my professional background has really been centered around media and specifically storytelling, creative storytelling. And so spoken word was just the natural outlet. That's kind of what I got popular for, but it isn't the only thing that I kind of love or can do. So I think storytelling and acting and these things was always kind of my first passion. And in the process of that, I focused more on the writing aspect.
MashaAllah. So you're currently in Canada, correct?
Yeah, I live in Toronto.
Okay,
yeah.
In Toronto. All right, Toronto. I guess what we're going to do, we're going to show a little clip of it. And then tell us a little bit about, what, just the synopsis so people can understand it.
Sure.
As you can see, we have a new Imam, Sheikh Musa, his father, Sheikh Yahya, who served this community for over 15 years. As we all know, he passed away 3 months ago.
You heard the news. A woman was just attacked in the building behind the house. I just don't know if it'll be safe for her to be here alone. Baba had a heart attack.
What?
Would you be able to watch over her while we're gone? I'm booking the first flight out. Just be her emergency contact in case anything happens.
I'm not staying with him. He's staying in his apartment and I'm staying in mine.
And you're still not getting much sleep, huh? You need something to pick you back up, you let me know. Any increased levels of stress or anxiety over the past few weeks?
We need to make sure whoever you marry is compatible with us.
And how exactly do you define compatibility?
You should be a person who our entire family approves of. Not just some boy from the neighborhood who you have a crush on.
This is Detective Marcus Canby from the Metropolitan Police Department.
This doesn't feel right.
What was his name? Can you describe him?
You came to me, remember?
Can I come in?
And how are you adjusting to your medication?
Dr. Horvitz, I'm fine.
You have to trust the process.
I'm not crazy. It feels like we're kind of crossing the line a bit.
Oh.
I had to give him something. He thought it was me.
Don't you ever tell anybody about what happened.
So it's actually not a short film. It's a full-length feature film, right? So it's 90 minutes long. And it's a story based upon the classical tale of Barsisa the monk, which is a story narrated by Ibn Kathir. It's not a hadith. It's one of the Israeliyats, one of the stories of the people of the past. And I did a kind of modern-day adaptation where I took the basic premise, which was a righteous person, a monk, during that time who was tempted by shaitan to have an illicit relationship with his next door neighbor, a woman who he was kind of charged with looking after. And so I took the basic parameters of that story and I decided, to implement it in modern day 2020's time. What would that look like?
Right.
And so there were elements of racism in the sense that I played the monk or the imam, and I'm looking after my next door neighbor who's Arab, and there's kind of tension between me and her family because one of the brothers doesn't really trust me with her. And then I also decided to really play up and discuss and dissect the whole premise of mental health and how that plays and what that actually looks like when it's playing out in the life of someone who is someone who is a community leader, right? Like an imam you would suspect is someone who is going to have their act together. So if someone like that can be plagued or deal with severe mental health, then it leaves the rest of us wondering, what would we do in a similar circumstance?
Wow. Yeah. And I was impressed how you touched on a lot of those different subjects, and it opened my eyes in certain areas about some of these things. So, so obviously this, the film has a lot of different elements of it, but what inspired you in generally to take this story of Barsisa, is his name?
Barsisa, yeah.
Barsisa, the monk, and then translate it into this modern day full-length film, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think, within our legacy, within Islamic tradition, there is such a history of storytelling that often gets overlooked. I think as creative people, you and I, we can both appreciate the early role that poetry and art and these things played, and even, in the infancy of Islam. But for a lot of people, for many years, I've always kind of been told and taught to push away my artistic ambition, or that, art is not something which, you should focus on. And Islam is about da'wah and about Quran and Arabic and hadith. And a lot of times people kind of lose sight of the fact that art is a way of connecting people's hearts to something greater than themselves. So for me, when I look at the history and legacy of our culture, I always think to myself, subhanAllah, 1/3 of the Quran is just related in stories. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses stories as a mechanism of teaching us about life, about everything. So if Allah Azza wa Jal is using stories as a way of teaching, then why shouldn't I? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that as a form of communication, then why shouldn't I tap into the great legacy of storytelling that we have? And so I've never really seen an Islamic tale that was retold or remade for modern day eyes. I think a lot of times when we think about hadith, when we think about the seerah, we think about these things, they're relegated to 1400 years ago. How would a hadith look playing out today? What would it be like if the famous hadith about the woman who was the prostitute and she gave the thirsty dog some water and she was forgiven because of that? These are stories that when I think about them, I'm like, dude, this would be sick in like a modern day twist. And that's actually a story that I'm writing, so don't steal it, inshallah.
Oh, that's
that and I always had, like, there's a lot of stories that I always thought about, like the man who killed 99 people. That to me screams like Jason Bourne, kind of like James Bond, assassin who turns his life around. Like I guess just in my vocabulary, in my vernacular, when I hear certain things, I contextualize them into stories. I think about, what would that story look like today? So I thought, why not give it a try? And, I spent quite a while on the script, kind of crafting it and working certain parameters and thinking about, how things would translate. And I think it came out quite well. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Yeah. And I really resonate where that, how the Quran says, we have ahsan al-qasas, we have the best stories,
Yeah.
And why not, take that and use the storytelling to our, to help us. So I guess I want to go into, the nitty gritty of how this works. So how long did it take you to film it? I mean, it's just, it's a major undertaking.
Yeah. So actually the filming part is not the hard part, in my opinion. Like the actual filming, we cram our shots, like we cram our shooting days. So I shot the entire thing, I would say in like maybe 15 or 16 actual shooting days.
Okay.
So it's not a lot for a film. That's actually quite short, but they're long days, but I'm very kind of meticulous with my locations and scene counts and how many we try and do in each day.
Right.
And I got really, really lucky, I should say. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened up so many doors for me that he made certain things possible. Like the location that we got for the main apartment building, we got at a relatively good rate. I ended up paying for it, and we got access to pretty much everything, the interior, the elevators. So if you saw the film, you know that there was a lot of stuff that took place in the elevators. And we found a building that just had the perfect look.
Yeah.
And we were able to get that.
So you rented the whole spot, or just?
Well, we rented two units. It was like a building that was kind of Airbnb-ing some of the units. Yeah. So we rented two of them, and then, you know, the agreement I had with the management was that they would allow us to film, because they knew we weren't actually staying there. They knew we were shooting a film. So, you know, we signed a bit of an agreement with them. So the filming of it took about 2 weeks and a bit. The pre-production, the actual preparation and writing and auditioning and all that kind of stuff took about maybe 7 or 8 months. I mean, to write, I think the script writing probably took, I would say maybe closer to like 6 or 7 months, you know, and I had a really good team and core people around me that kind of helped advise me in that regards. Yeah. And then obviously there's a pre-production process, which is location scouting, which is, you know, actually casting the actors, which is working with the director and cinematographer to do your, you know, kind of shot list and how you want to actually shoot everything. And so that took, you know, a few weeks time. And then the major undertaking really, in my opinion, is the editing. Yeah. The post-production took almost a year. I'd say probably more. I shot the film actually in 2017. So that tells you a little bit of how long it took. We shot it in 2017, and I just released it like last September. So like 2019. So, you know, it's a long process, and a lot of people may not appreciate that, you know, but it does take quite a while. I've gotten quite good at like managing my time and money in terms of actually how to put a film together. So for example, this film, although it's a 90-minute film, actually the original cut was around 2 hours. Wow. So I had to cut out 30 minutes of content, which is something that was quite hard to do.
Yeah. That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. And then the entire film though, I shot it for like, in Canadian dollars, it was about 30,000. So that's US is about 20 grand, which is like nothing.
Woo! That's really good. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
And so this was all filmed in Toronto?
Yeah. So in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so all the casting and all that was done
everything. Everything's local.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, it helps us keep costs down. It helps us keep costs relevant and especially because Toronto and within Canada, Toronto is obviously the biggest city, but it's one of the biggest. A lot of people in the U.S. might not know this, but a lot of American television shows are actually shot and filmed in Canada.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of them. So actually, the building that I used for my film, it was used by I think there's a horror TV show called The Strain or something like that. I don't know what it's. There's one TV show out there. So it's the same building that they shoot that film in.
Oh, okay.
So I was actually able to get the same set that they had.
Nice.
We have like all our props and everything because we actually shot the film like it was based in the US. So if you notice, we used like American currency, and so we shot it like it was shot for the US, but we just shot it the whole thing in Canada. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to do because costs are a lot cheaper. I think in the US specifically, like when you start going to like Cali and LA and stuff like that, like everything just gets exponentially more expensive. Yeah. And people just, they kind of see a film or they see television or they have this idea that it's a cash cow for them. So it's just a lot cheaper to do it in Canada.
Yeah. No, that's true. You know, because, you know, we were trying to do like some film here and in Washington, D.C., it's not like you know, California. Yeah. So it's good to know that, you know, you guys have a good base of finding actors and talent and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the good thing is in Toronto, we have access to a lot of actors. Yeah. There's a big thriving like theater community here. And but I would get a lot of like first timers, not even first timers. I believe everyone can act if they have a role that's appropriate for them. So if I need a guy who is like, you know, shy or whatever, and I find an actor who's just like that role, then it's for me, it's a natural fit. I don't necessarily have to get someone who has 25 years experience in front of the lens, right? Sometimes I can my cheat code is I find people that are really close to the role anyways. Like, for example, the detective in the film, Righteous Sinner, the guy who plays the police officer, Okay.
Okay.
So I was saying, like, the character who played the police officer in Righteous Sinner, he doesn't have any range, like, as an actor. Like, I found him to be very, he was very monotone.
Right.
He couldn't really do much in terms of variety of acting, but his role, his natural disposition was perfect for that role.
Right.
Like, he just sounded like he was a police officer. He sounded like he was one of those kind of Harrison Ford kind of old timers, and so it just worked, right? So that's kind of a way that I find sometimes it works to my advantage. Other times you might want to, because my whole thing was I always wanted to act, but I just never could find roles that were appropriate for me to act in, and I never felt comfortable. Like, I don't want to play like terrorist number 3 or something like that, I want to play meaningful roles. So I was like, well, if I just write my own roles, I can play whoever I want.
Yeah. Well, that goes into my next question, because you were obviously directing and producing this film, but you also acted it, and you had one of the main parts in it. You were the main. I don't know if you would say protagonist or.
yeah. I mean, he is the main protagonist. Yeah. I actually didn't direct the film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was the executive producer, and I wrote it, and I starred in it. But then obviously it's like my baby, so I'm kind of like I'm like a backseat director. So even my director, who I hired and bring on board, like, he hates working with me because I'm literally just like over his shoulder, like, no, we should do this or we should try that, right? Because I wish I could direct it, but it would be too many hats to wear at one time.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering how you did that. Like, but obviously you had somebody to direct, and then you would and you had, I guess you had memorized all the lines and everything, and that's because acting is a whole separate thing.
It's a lot easier when you write it. Right. So like I wrote the lines, so it's I have an advantage over everyone else. Like, and I'm intimately connected to the characters. Like, I know, a lot of times when you're dealing with actors, they'll ask you like, okay, what's my character's motivation, or like, what's going on in their mind here? Like, in my situation, there's no questions to ask. I know exactly what the characters are thinking. I know exactly how they're supposed to sound. And I think in a weird way, it might be helpful to have the writer and actor, or the writer and main actor, on set with the other actors, because sometimes, and this happens on sets, like the writer has a certain vision, the director has another vision, and then the producers or the people above them have another vision, right? In this sense, I've condensed that process because, like, my vision is really it's more in line with the pure version of what the script is supposed to be, right? It's sometimes I work with the director and he'll kind of help me interpret certain things, like, okay, why don't we try this or why don't we try that? But like, when I'm on set, there's no misunderstandings in terms of what the story is supposed to be about. I wrote it and I'm acting in it, and so in that sense, it does kind of help.
Yeah. So so in the editing process, were you heavily involved also? I mean, obviously, but did you have somebody else edit it or?
No, I hire an editor. But I'm intimately involved with it. Like, I see the cuts from day one until the final edit, and I provide, like, man, I can't even watch the film anymore, to be honest. Like, I've seen it so many times, and I've seen so many drafts and so many versions of it. At some point, like, I actually have to bring other eyes in because I'm just desensitized to it.
Sure.
But yeah, I have a proper audio guy. I have a proper, we have a colorist, someone who we pay after to color the entire film. We have an editor who works on it. I had a team of like 3 or 4 people. Like, we kind of work by committee. So, we'll watch the cut, we'll give our feedback. But I mean, I because I'm that invested in it, I obviously am, I want to see it to the end. So I'm involved in every step of the process.
Yeah. Well, speaking about the sound, I noticed that you had a really powerful soundtrack. And I noticed it was voice only. So I was wondering that I was pretty, because, really to do that is harder than it looked, to get all the different moods, but also using without instruments. I'm curious to know how you did that.
Yeah, it's funny because basically my good friend Ilyas Mao, who's a sheet artist here from Canada, I kind of, and this is not a secret, I mean, people who know me and know our story between me and him, I kind of discovered him while making my first film. So initially I made a film called Tug of War a few years back in 2015, and I wanted to create a vocal only kind of soundtrack to accompany it. So when I kind of started looking around and I spoke to my director about it, he's like, hey, look, I know this guy who's a singer. He's in Guelph, which is a city not far away from where I am. And, we should reach out to him and see if he'd be interested. He explained to me that he's a Muslim brother, and basically he's involved in mainstream singing and music, but he might be interested in trying something like this out. So I was like, all right, cool. So let's hit him up. So I spoke with him, and I gave him we gave him the premise of the film, and I explained to him what I wanted. And so he, and he did a good job on it. And he actually, through the process of making the songs for the film that were vocal only, I kind of convinced him to say, look, you could turn this into a real career. Like, you have a good voice, and, you're someone who's creative. And so that was the birth of Ilyas Mao, right? So
the backstory.
And so since then, I've been working with him on all my films. He's become like he's kind of the chief soundtrack and sound kind of guy on my projects. And I've been writing the sheets for him for the past few years as well. So it's a kind of, it's a very complimentary relationship that we have. But yeah, I mean, I credit him because I think he's taken the premise. I'll sometimes give him samples or examples of what I want, and then he'll just, that's where his zone is. Like, he's able to hear things and manipulate. He's learned a lot about audio composition, and he's learned a lot about production and stuff on his own. He's been studying that and working on that. So he's like my go-to guy now. It's something that's like a turnkey operation with me and him. I just show him the script. I just show him the film, and I'm like, all right, I need music here. I need music here. And he's like, all right, cool. And he just works on it, and it comes out really well. Alhamdulillah.
That really, yeah. So that was one of the things I was impressed. So overall, I have my personal thoughts of what I liked and I didn't like about the film, but overall, I thought it was very well done. What are people thinking? Like, what's the feedback that people are giving about the film in general?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the film has been getting a great reception. Obviously, like when this whole Corona thing happened, it put a stop to a lot of my screening because I had. Up until that point, like February, I was jam-packed. I was like weekend to weekend. I was in different cities. From the time that I canceled from like March or I think my last screening was actually in New York at Imam Siraj Wahaj's Masjid. And that was like the first weekend in March. And then I think after that is when things got a little bit murky and people were like, we don't know if we can still do it because people are shutting down. But I had basically about 15 screenings planned from the second weekend in March until Ramadan.
Wow.
So it was picking up. Alhamdulillah, steam was picking up. But qadar Allah ma sha fa'al. Like, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, everything happens for a reason. It's, I'm okay with that. So the reception we'd received before that was great. And what I usually do for me is that I don't just show the film. So I pair the films with like a post-film discussion and workshop.
Right.
So people watch the film, and then I'm there afterwards to give kind of critical insight into the story and some of the back end. I talk about, what was this character actually experiencing, and I give some insight into some of the premises that I came up with when I was writing, and then I allow the audience to ask questions. So I think in terms of like an event, I think it's like one of the most like, filling events you can get from a Muslim community's perspective, because they get to watch a movie, they have the actor there, they have the writer there, they can ask questions, he gives the talk afterwards. Like, it was like the 3-course meal for me. Like, I felt like I was doing everything,
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And what about, mainly this film is kind of directed towards Muslims. Have non-Muslims been able to access it? And the way I saw it was online. Alhamdulillah, you were able, you have it on demand now. So,
yeah,
all our viewers, check it out. We'll have the link down below so you guys can check it out. But how is this a movie that's aimed for non-Muslim, or is it more of a Muslim-focused film?
No, I mean, for me, I see myself working towards creating a Muslim film industry. I see the need and I see the impact, having films that are centered around our stories and our realities. I see the impact that has and that can have.
Right.
So as much as like some people get offended even when I say that like my films are for Muslims, because they feel like, why aren't I allowed to watch? And it's like, no, you're allowed to watch it. I don't care. You pay money and watch it. I'm not going to stop you. But just like Bollywood knows their audience, I know my audience basically. Like, I know who I'm targeting. I know who who's supposed to be seeing the film, and I'm not apologetic about that at all. Like, to me, that's I think the evolution and the future of our dawah, and how we start understanding that, first of all, whenever you see a TV show or a film, there's always a level of propaganda that's embedded within it. All media is propaganda. It's just not all good propaganda.
Right.
So for me, it's about creating good propaganda about Islam. Like, I want people to see and think and be critical about their belief and about what they understand. And I want to use film as a mechanism, as a tool to actually achieve that. So yeah, my films are based for Muslims, but I have had success like in non-Muslim film circuits, and I've like my previous film Detainee X, I won a couple awards in different film festivals and stuff. Awesome. But like that whole world of mainstream, especially cracking into it from the indie perspective, like it's so hard and it's so draining, and there's so many like loopholes, and it's, you have like all these people you need to suck up to, and like for me it's like, look, I'm not that excited about that world. I don't see myself trying to like become mainstream, trying to meet someone like Harvey Weinstein in a hotel room. Like that's not, I have zero intention, right? I have like zero motive whatsoever to try and go down that road. For me, I see myself helping to pioneer and create an industry where, like I put out a film, I know that I can go to DC, I can go to Maryland, I can go to Virginia. I have communities, I have centers, I have theaters that I can rent out and book. And I think that's the beginning of creating an actual industry. Just like when you guys started with a nasheed, like, how many years ago, you had to carve and create the actual industry that's around it, right? There was no maybe understanding from the Muslim community, like, okay, how do we book artists? Right. How do we, what does a venue need to have? Like, what do we need to do in terms of AV, or, like I'm trying to really carve that out now so that in the future, it's just like, it's a turnkey operation. It's just a pipeline, I can just create, because right now I'm doing everything. I'm writing the films, I'm acting them, I'm producing them. And then I'm actually marketing, promoting. Yeah. I'm going to the actual room, setting up the projector for the movie. Like I'm doing every single part of it. Yeah. Right. Yes. So I want to do it in a way that, I can then outsource certain aspects of this process, specifically the distribution prospect. I want to give that to people who are much more qualified than I am, and then just focus on popping films out, one after the other, and just having that distribution pipeline ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I hope that, Allah blesses you in this effort. I think it's a very noble effort. I mean, I guess in conclusion, what advice do you have for young people who, there's a lot of people who are trying to get into this. And I think this generation, before in the earlier generations, maybe they were focused on certain professions. And now I think there's more understanding that, we have to go into different professions. We have to be, expansive, I guess, in what we choose to do, just to help promote this, to help the ummah. So any advice do you have for our up and coming filmmakers who might be watching this?
I think really in today's day and economy, there's really no excuse to not be creative, or there's nothing that would hold you back from at least attempting to, fulfill whatever it is you want to do. I think in the past there was a big, there was a big gap in terms of, like, for example, equipment used to cost a lot of money, and you wouldn't be able to get lights or a camera or lenses, but now, like, everything's gone digital, right? Everything's a lot cheaper. You can shoot a film on a DSLR camera if you really want to. There's nothing really stopping you from doing it. So I think the scale of economy has gone down such that finances isn't an issue. I think the major thing holding people back is just creativity. Muslims and a lot of young people that I talk to, they might have ideas of, like, okay, well, this would be a great idea. It's easy to make I'm just going to say it this way. It's easy to make a film or an idea when your budget is infinity. Like, I can come up with 1,000 great premises and ideas for something to do that, if I had like Hollywood money, would be great, right? It's a lot harder to be creative when you're confined to certain parameters. Right. And by parameters, I mean financial. I mean, in terms of like just Sharia, like, okay, for example, even in my film Righteous Sinner, even though I'll give you, for people who haven't seen it, it's a bit of a giveaway, but the two characters end up making zina, right? In the film, there's never a time when the actual characters touched each other, right? I had to keep the actual, myself and the female character like apart on screen, because in reality we know they're not actually together, right?
Right.
So there's the parameters of the Sharia. There's the whole thing around music. There's not showing grotesque violence or swearing or anything of that. So like all these parameters. This is what to me is a true testament to your creative ability.
Right.
It's the same reason why when you play basketball, there's such rule as double dribble, or you can't travel, or, when you look at the great players, you look at the fact that they were able to do what they were able to do based on the rules of the game. Right. So for me, that's where creativity really takes over. It's when you're able to confine yourself to the rules of the game, the rules, the parameters that we've set up as Muslims, or however you interpret certain things, and you're able to excel. You're able to create something awesome based on that parameter. To me, that shows your true creative grit.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of our community that's missing out. I think people are scared to take chances.
Yeah.
They're scared to take risks. And at the same time, the people who are comfortable taking risks, a lot of times they're not fully grounded within Islamic theology. Like there are a lot of people out there who are just passing off their, like harami versions of film as Islamic because they happen to have a Muslim name. So I think there's a fine line. There's a lot of people out there, kind of more secular leaning Muslims who, approach cinema and filmmaking without any qualms. They don't have any shame or boundaries. So for them, it's like, why don't we talk about sexuality within the ummah? And it's like, whoa, chill out. You know what I mean? Like we have haya, like we're not trying to go all the way in,
Right.
So I think balancing those two things, the need for the urgency of art, like really putting the emphasis on the fact that this needs to be told. I need to tell this story. This is important. People need to have it, versus the conservative nature of like practicing Islam, like the fact that I'm not gonna put myself on blast. I'm not gonna swear. I'm not gonna do these things which might look great on film, but they're counteractive or they're counterproductive to my ultimate goal, which is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
I think if you can challenge yourself by doing things which are interesting and important, but do it in a way which ultimately you will be pleased with watching it on the Day of Judgment. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for whatever reason, asks you, to recount what you did, and Allah Azza wa Jal will ask us to recount what you did on this earth, and those scrolls come out, and you're able to see this project of what you've accomplished, and it's on your scale of good deeds. I think ultimately that should be the main audience we're trying to attract. So for me, it's like I want to make art that's compelling, that's a learning tool that people can benefit from, but I also don't want it to be cheesy, right? I want it to be something that's actually pushing the boundaries, and that's something that I think I was able to do with Righteous Sinner. So alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful for that.
MashaAllah. Well, thank you very much. I encourage everybody to check out the film Righteous Sinner. And of course, also check out the other works from Boonaa Mohammed, all the spoken word and you do a little nasheed too, right? You rhyme a little bit, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was my first, I grew up rapping, I grew up in acting, you know what I mean? So it's like, for people now, it's funny because they're like, oh, you're doing this now. And I'm like, well, actually, that was kind of, that's what I always did, right? But alhamdulillah, I have some rap stuff. I have a lot of spoken word and stuff online. Yeah. And I actually have 2 new films, by the way, that I've already shot.
Ooh, okay.
That I've already shot, and literally one of them is already finished, and the other one is I'm just touching up some parts in post. Okay. But because of this whole Corona thing, I've had to postpone because I'm still not pushing Righteous Sinner at this point. I wasn't able to finish showing Righteous Sinner everywhere I wanted to, but eventually, inshallah, those other films will be coming out as well. So it's exciting for me to know that I want to keep going with this, and I feel like I have a head start because I've already invested so much time in it. But people should keep an eye out for my other films coming out soon as well, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, and inshallah, hopefully you and I keep in touch, and thank you very much for being able to be on DeenTV.
No problem. Jazakallah khair for having me. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This DeenTV video was made possible in part by Islamic Relief USA, working together for a better world, and by Recycle Processes Incorporated.